Hello everyone, welcome to my very first Pathfinder look-see. Today we're going to look at Lostomens, the Mwangi Expanse. I'm not sure how to pronounce that properly, so if I've got it wrong, I am sorry. Now there was a lot of hype about this book, especially considering there's a lot of creators that were new, or well, new to Pathfinder maybe, and there's a lot of people credited as the authors, so there's quite a few. What I'll do is I'll put the names of the authors on the screen, and then we'll continue. As I'm quite new to reviewing Pathfinder books and Starfinder books, I've read a few, but I've never really looked at them like this. Now, I have waited a bit until the hype died down over this book, so these are just my personal views. I'm not saying that, you know, I really don't use the campaign setting of Pathfinder as it is. I just use Pathfinder as a toolbox and then implement my own stuff, or I use it as inspiration for my own settings and people's. Saying that, this book is one of the better books out there. When you compare it to something like Realm of the Frost Maiden by Wizards of the Coast, or Dungeons and Dragons people, or Hasbro, or whatever you want to call them, it's a lot nicer. It's presented a lot easier to read. The book itself is filled with wonderful pictures, and the writing is crisp and clean and coherent. There is a lot in here if you want to include a sort of new type of culture into your games. And while it doesn't teach you, well, it isn't rather preachy as some books can be, it isn't in your face as some books can be, it is really nicely laid out. However, there are some issues with it, but that's mainly to do with the Pathfinder setting itself, and not to do with the book or the writing within. There is a wonderful little timeline, but again, I don't use the Pathfinder default settings, so I wasn't really interested in that. I do like this picture here, which is a sort of tribal people. They almost look like an Arakora, so maybe they're gods at Arakora. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I did like it. It did give me some very Arakora memories or indications, shall we say. Going from that, I want to say that the style of the book, like the backgrounds and the borders of it, are really cool. I love when books do this because it gives you a lot of information without words, if you understand. It's visually presented. It's almost pictographic or pictographic in its display. There's a lot of background about various races. For example, there's the Eligi, a splinter of elves who are sort of like tribalistic. I really like this picture that I put up now. It's sort of like a ritual taking place. There's a lot of wonderful like spirit masks and stuff, which you could use inspiration as like a ritual for maybe a player character or NPC or something like that. But I really do like that. As I said, I do love when these new takes on elves or dwarves, and this book, the Mwangi Expanse, really does that in spades, so I have to give it props for that. Saying that, I'm not sure that, for example, there's a piece of artwork here, and it looks very odd. It almost looks science fiction in its depiction of temple structures. While I say it wouldn't fit, that's not exactly true, but it is a bit of a distraction compared to the other pictures within the book. But then again, you know, you can have multiple environments in one continent, and maybe that's what it's trying to put out. I do love the tribalistic costumes and the ruins. It gives you, in some parts, it gives you almost an Incan feel, with a sort of serpent temple-esque feel. In other ones, it does display a sort of desert type atmosphere, or sort of boa tree type thing. There's a lot of inspiration here, and there's a lot you can do with it. But again, I think some of it is let down by the Pathfinder default setting, which I am not a fan of. I'm not. To me, it feels like in some ways they've tried to do Forgotten Realms, but they haven't captured what made the Forgotten Realms good before, well, the Spell Plague, let's call it. There are some pictures, though, that, while aesthetically good, they're a bit distracting from the settings. There's one that's almost, as I said, almost science fiction in its depiction. There's quite a few of them here. I'm not exactly sure. I think that they're the Khaliji people, or the Khaliji elves that build these structures, but again, it feels a little too sci-fi in my opinion, but that's just, again, my opinion. The Mwangi are a sort of new take on the Dwarves. They've got an almost, if you ever played Legend of the Burning Sands, there was a group that were like the Thieves Guild, basically. They were like a very open type of Thieves Guild, and they had like knives that they would fight with. I get almost that inspiration from the Dwarves. Now, the Mwangi, I hope I'm saying that right, Dwarves taken in a new way. Some of them don't have beards. They are depicted as, I would say, less stocky than normal Dwarves, but you get an idea that they live in the shadows of mountains, but not directly within them. So there's also one called Cloudspire, a city here that we've got a picture of, that is almost sigil in its picturesqueness. I love the bronze and copper emblems that the Dwarves have, the Mwangi. There's also the Trallo, which are a bit more traditional Dwarves, but they seem to have a sort of like mystical flame hair towards them. So, you know, again, another take on Dwarves, which are interesting, and you know, it's always good to have less traditional dwarves like stonemasons who live in a mountain, and it's always nice to have less than traditional elves like nobilistic elves who are aloof, etc, etc. I do love new takes on existing races. They have almost a shamanistic elemental point of view to them, which is good. There's also a few human races. There's a sort of halfling race with the Songo, which again, new take on races, which is always good. In some respects, it does give me an idea of a sort of Romanistic culture, but with more of a earthy, clay-esque based building type thing. So you know the clay-esque buildings that you sometimes see in certain cultures? The Songo halflings, and there's a lovely picture of like an amphitheatre or a Colosseum, and I'll put it up now, and it's really interesting to see, you know, buildings, because you get a lot from picturesque stuff than you tend to from writing. The one thing I will say is the Matangi, the take on the orcs, was a little... They just reminded me of normal orcs, to be honest. I was hoping with something new, and unfortunately, I didn't get that from the Mwangi orcs, Matani orcs, or Matangi orcs. I have no idea how to say that, sorry. But orcs, I feel, are very hard to get right in games, because you either end up with monstrous individuals who are little more than beasts, or you end up with the noble primal people that you sometimes get in Warcraft, or you get something in between which doesn't really fit, or you get like stuff in Lord of the Rings, which again, some people enjoy that type of orc. I can understand having a purpose, you know, having an antagonist that just live for conquest, but I do like new takes on it, and this was probably the, I wouldn't say the most, it was the most disappointing part of the book. Going from that, we get some, so going from that, there's a race called an Anadi, or Anadi, I'm not, again, I don't know how to say that. There's a race of sentient spiders who remind me of the spider people in Wildsea, Now, these are more spiderific, I would say, than the races in Wildsea, who are basically, they just use corpses as puppets. They're rather disturbing in Wildsea, but these are rather more cute, shall we say. Less the horrible blood-drinking spiders from Werewolf the Apocalypse as well. It would be interesting to do one as a player race, to be honest. I wonder if you can. Yes, apparently you can. Good. That's interesting. There's also the Conrasu, who are a sort of golem race. But in the pictures that we have of them, they seem rather immobile. So I don't know how you would actually walk around as them if they're sort of like golems that are implanted into the ground. But there we go. Apparently they're growing. Interesting. But yeah, I've put a picture of them here. They do look like they're growing into the ground, so it is a rather... I think that you would have to... I'm not sure how you would... Because they don't have a... Oh, yes they do. They have one that's sort of walking around on like 4 sort of limbs that are made from roots. So maybe that would be the way you would do. You would be some sort of dryad-esque type creature. But they also look very golem-esque in there. In the other pictures. We go on to the Knolls now. Knolls are a sort of hyena race, and I guess this is the perfect book for them. Now, Knolls tend to be one of those races that are universally evil. However, in the Mwangi Expanse, or I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, I really don't know how to say it. But they seem almost honourable. Do I like this interpretation of Knolls? Yeah, kind of. I certainly like the ritualistic dress that they put them in, but in some ways I do think that certain things, for example, if they're a hyena-based race, it would be a bit odd for them to be, because Knolls eat bones, hyenas eat bones, and then they spit out like a pellet. So you having one in the party that would be constantly doing that might get on, maybe I would put some sort of debuff for that, but there we go. That's the only thing that I can think of. There is also a new race called the Galona, who are, I'm not exactly sure what they're supposed to be, but they're sort of humanoids, but also crossed with some sort of like alien from Aliens creature. So it does mention that people are probably scared by your physiology. You're damn straight you'd be scared of them. But again, at least we get some new races, and it's really cool to see less traditional races in games. We also have the Gripply, who are a frog people. There is a frog people in D&D already, but I can't remember the name offhand. But it's not very important. So they're okay. They're okay. They're just a frog people. I do like the way that they've got one that's sort of like a poisonous tree frog, though. That's really cool. So, thumbs up for that. Then we get the Meshisk. The Meshisk are a sort of like spiny elf people. Again, new take on elves. I always like new takes on elves. But they're almost vampiric as well in their appearance, in my opinion. So maybe I would play into that. I would... it says they're bone-feathered humanoids who lurk underground in dark tunnels. But they almost look elfish to me, so... Then we have the Bilko, Boggart, and Catfolk people. We also have Lizardfolk, Kobolds, a version of Leshy, which seem to be more Gourd-based. I always love the Leshy. And we have the Serpent Folk. I do love this picture of the Serpent Folk here. He looks like he's either going to sell you a dagger or stab you in the face. So yeah, I like that one. We also have some other races, Planula, Scions, Tybosan. And then it goes into religion with new gods and new demonic peoples. I do like that. Kothar, I like him. He's cool. He's a rather golden lion creature. Very regal. Almost reminds me of Behemoth. We also have a picture of a individual or a deity called Luha that reminds me of a very old picture from the Monster Manual. If you remember the blue Monster Manual that was in AD&D, you get pictures of a sphinx. It reminds me of the old sphinx picture, but it is very regal, very beautiful picture here. I really do like that. Then we have a serpent, Mazulde. Sorry again if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Then it goes into other religions, and then we have a bit on geography. And we have like a lovely picture of Darkreach here, which is sort of like Puzzle City, seems to be, but I do like that. Then we have a bit of jungle. I would have liked more things about jungle survival and how it can impact your players more. For example, having it like, in some respects, it's newcomers to the area. It's basically the green death. And, you know, people who live there, they've managed to survive there, but newcomers will basically be in a lot of trouble. Then it goes into sort of like forest lands and various other places in the Mwangi Expanse, such as plains and cityscapes, and we get a rather strange crystal creature here in the field of glass. That's certainly an NPC or monster that you could use. Screaming jungle. A thick layer of fog and perpetually rolls down the shattered hills and the Bandu hills. Seen from above, the lake of crowds is little more than a forest. The harsh screams of primates and birds perpetually echo throughout the humid mists, giving the jungle its infamous name. But again, there's no real rules for surviving in a rather nasty environment. I wish that they'd included them in this book. But it is a nice collection of cultures and inspiration for your own settings. Again, I wouldn't use it as it's designed. I would use it as a toolbox. But I'm going to say this again because it needs to be said. This is a much better toolbox than the Run with the Frost Maiden for Icewind Dale, because it's better presented and it gives you a lot more with a lot less. And it doesn't force you into awful adventures. Such a rubbish book. I should stop rowing on it, but it's just one of my favourite settings that's just been turned into something really bad. It does then go into some cities, so it gives you some city maps that you can use. It gives you some information about various cities. Again, this is awesome if you're going to use it for the default Pathfinder setting, but if you're going to use it like I would, you can take parts of it and interpret it in different ways. I like the way that they've included flags for the different cities and different city-states, which it reminds me of the Conan adventures, that the different cities would have their, various flags and their various structures, or the Dark Sun city-states. Again, very reminiscent of a lot of our games. It's really well done. It's much better in some respects because you have a lovely colourful maps, and you get some like little pieces of artwork which enables you to see what stuff is like in the city itself, which is, I always like stuff like that, which Rime of the Frost Maiden could have done, and other settings too fail to do a lot of the time. I like this picture here. I'll just put it up because there's a riding giraffe. It's the most absurd thing and also the most greatest thing that I've ever seen. But there we go, a riding giraffe and a lion. Right, I'll just do a bit of conclusion now. I just want to mention one more city-state. Sengor, Major Mwangi, trading port and naval power. Very piratic. Mercantile council, so yeah. It even gives you the lists that they trade, and I like that. That's really cool. That they give you like a trading thingy, resources. But yeah, we've got a lovely map and the ships itself. The ships are awesome. I really love the turtlesque design of them. So kudos for that. So wrapping up, I think the Mwangi Expanse is a book deserving of a look-see, especially if you want to make your own sort of cultures, and want to take elves, dwarves and humans and various other races in a new way. It doesn't introduce a couple of new races. As I mentioned, it does have takes on existing races, for example the Leshy, Serpent Folk, Lizard Men, Humans. It does also give you a sense of wonder for the environment and gives you a lovely bristery towards the end. It also gives you different pictures of various types of anardi later. So you could be basically a normal looking spider, or you can be a humanoid looking one later on. So yeah, I like that. As this was my first real one doing a video off between Pathfinder and Starfinder, I just want to put this picture of Groot's Lang up while I'm doing the conclusion, because I like that picture. It's a bit weird elephant monster. It is a very pretty book, and it is really useful, and I'm grateful that they've brought in various different people and they put their own spin on various cultures and things, and it's a rather lovely picturesque book that displays a lot of different cultures and respects them in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of playable races that the book gives you, and it's certainly worth it for those alone. Now, a lot of people went off Pathfinder after certain situations, and I think that's a shame, because Pathfinder 2.0 is a step up in a lot of ways in gaming, and what will be always one of those things that I will say, yeah, this is something that is done right and done well. So there we go, that's the Mwangi Expanse. That's my very first Pathfinder look-see. I hope that you enjoyed it. It is a rather vibrant, picturesque book. It's very pretty visually. It's really nicely laid out, and I love the glossary and index at the end. It's not in the beginning, but it is in the end. It's rather lovely. So if you're looking for something specific, you've got a lovely index. I would have liked it to be color-coded though. I would have liked the sections to be color-coded. That way it would have been easier for you to skip various sections if you're looking at the book itself, or have bookmarks with the various sections. That's my only real gripe with it, and again, it's default in the Pathfinder setting, which I would have preferred a more toolboxy type thing. It's not, but there we go. You can't please everyone, and I still think it's a great book. I think it's a lot better than a lot of other companies have done. So yeah, thank you all for watching. Do take care of yourselves, and bye bye.